Oh yeah! Two guys who aren't going to come into your House of Representatives and shoot up the place. It's the Flycast. That's
Okay.
John. I'm Steve, and we're semi-sane people.
So glad that we're starting this off with some terrifying current events. That's good. That's good. Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
You know what I always say? It may be wrong, but I do tend to handle bad things with humor.
Oh no, that's a great thing. That's a great way to handle bad things. You know, whatever. I'm down. I just wasn't expecting that.
and that was the key.
Yeah.
Is like not telling you what I was going to do.
Right.
The genuine shock was
worthwhile. Well, welcome. We are Steve and John, a couple of nerdy fools who love playing Dungeons and Dragons. Got a lot of DM experience between us. Decided we should do a podcast and just kind of like talk about shit. So that's kind of what we do. We've got a topic every week. Go ahead and we'll talk about that for a little while. And then second half of the hour, we'll go ahead and take questions from our Discord. If you're not part of the Discord, wherever you're watching, there should be a link or something like that somewhere. Go ahead and jump on in, join us in the in the Flycaptain Discord, in the Flycast channel. There'll be a spot. You can go ahead and leave questions every week. We will get to them, as many as we can. But yeah. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us, and we're going to go ahead and jump on in. Today, our topic is, we're getting back to these versus ones. Topic is Rule of Cool versus Rules as Written. That was kind of a fun one to discuss there. I think we should kind of start off by defining what the heck we're talking about when we say Rule of Cool versus Rules as Written. Yeah, what are your thoughts, Steve?
When you told me that's what you wanted to do, and I was like, okay. I think a rule of cool is like when you make a snap decision where somebody does something that's really cool, but it gives a story an extra oomph, but it might not mechanically be what the rules are in the book. Sometimes the rules of the book can be a little strict and literally in a box. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you need rules. Right. You can't have if it gets too chaotic, then it's just going to be all over the place. And as much as I love some good old fashioned chaos, you know, when it's too much, it's too much. You got to have those rules to fall back on. I think somebody, the Brent saying, to hear me out, the sell it to me, you know, kind of moments.
Right.
Or somebody just does something that, you know, is not, like, they'll do something, like, I made a ruling on the spot about a construct, I think, a few weeks ago. And there was nothing that said anything in the, like, about the construct that it couldn't be, like, what was it, Dispel Magic. And the player was a brand new player, cast it. It was a really good idea. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find anything at the time within like 30 seconds to say no. So I just made a rule. And I said, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it was a good idea. I liked it. I thought it was very creative and outside of the box. So I guess that's kind of what I'm looking at. Is like, if I'm going to make a rule of cool decision, was that player really creative in that moment? Was there something that that made me go as a DM that like, that's pretty fucking cool, you know?
Right.
Like, yeah, because like we want to have fun too, guys. Believe it or not, and we want you to succeed. But sometimes we gotta uphold certain standards and rules for our own sakes and own sanity. But if you do something super cool, then occasionally we're gonna be like, yeah, I'll let that ride, you know. And I know you do it too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to describe it, right? Like so rules as written is like, okay, this book right here tells me what the rules are. I follow exactly what it says, more or less. Whereas the rule of cool is more along the lines of, you want to do a thing, there's not really a rule for it, or maybe there is, and it kind of bends it a little bit, but we'll work with it. We'll let you do it and kind of move on because it was cool. It moved the story forward. It had a purpose. So yeah, like I think that's kind of what we're talking about when we're kind of juxtaposing the two.
That doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it every time.
Right, and I think that's the thing. Like with all of these different versus episodes that we've done, it's been interesting because we've both been kind of on one side or the other, but at the same time, we both definitely realize the need for balance between them. Right. So, for instance, like I am more of a rules as written person than Steve is. Steve is certainly more of a rule of cool person. But we both use both. We both need both, right? Like Steve doesn't run a game to where he's just like, well, whatever happens, and we'll just toss this rule book out the window. You want to move 80 feet on your turn because it's cool? Why not? And I'm not going to be over here and say, no, if the rule doesn't explicitly say, then you can't do it. You know, it kind of makes me think of like Pathfinder has like multiple different rules for how to balance yourself on a log or something like that, like hard written rules. It's like, nobody wants that. Nobody needs that. Toss that out. Like, that's a position where you just like can kind of like let the dice fly and figure out what you want to do in the moment. Kind of a rule of cool thing. So like, yeah, both of us definitely see the need for balance in there. It's just kind of like, where do you draw the line? Where do you find that balance, I guess?
I'll admit, there's sometimes like in like certain encounters where they've just drawn on for fucking ever.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just like, let certain things go. But generally that only happens if A, I'm really tired, or B, it's just like, this is just a slog. Well, I mean, I think that's for you, but for me,
I think that's a good time to use that though, and let that kind of step in. Like if you are in a situation where like the players obviously have this beat, they're going to win this for sure. Like there's no way the monsters are going to kill them all at this point. The players are definitely going to win this, but for whatever reason, they're just having a hard time landing a blow or whatever, and it's just been going on and on. And now we're on round 12 of this thing, and the monsters can't hit the players. And the players, for whatever reason, are only hitting one monster a turn, and this is just absurd. Like that, I mean, it just kind of makes sense that that's a point where you can kind of step in and kind of like move things along a little bit. I think anything that's going to move the story forward and the players are going to have fun with, I think that's definitely a good time to use the rule of cool. I think you just have to kind of be careful about going too far. The rules are there for a reason, and it's not to stop people from having fun, but it's kind of to, like, make that victory earned, I guess, right? Like, so if you are always rule of cooling everything, like, yeah, just do whatever you want to, at some point, it's just write a novel then. Your players are here to play a game, and there have to be rules to that to kind of overcome the challenges and whatnot. And if you're always just twisting it for, yeah, that sounded fun, why not, then that's going to take away from that challenge.
Some of it's organization, too. Like, I lack organization like there's no tomorrow. But whenever I need organization, I can always at least depend on, hey, there's this rule set here, and I can at least go back to that. I can go back to that hardcore, set of rules. I think Brent wanted to change something about his ranger fighter or something to make one of his saves strength. And I fought him for a while until I was like, yeah, I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. But it was because like that character had certain saves, and I'm like, well, that's the rules, that's not me. But I eventually caved, and I was like, fine, not a huge deal. I had to like literally put myself in his shoes, like with what he was trying to create with his player. I think I've done that with Adrian too, like when we made the white mage class.
Right.
We had to find a balance. It was a rule of cool flavor, but we made rules for it. Like you could only take this spell at this level, this spell at this level. We balanced it. So we gave it a cool flavor, but we made rules.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind whenever, like, those of us who DM a lot can. I think we've talked about this in other episodes too, but can very easily get into the mindset of just the mindset of the DM and forget what it's like as the player. And we always have to,
Very
like,
easy.
remind yourself what is it like as the player. So, like, if you are a hardcore rules as written person and you've got a player being like, seriously though, there's no rule about this and I just want to, like, do it, like, why can't we do that, and you're just arguing against him so hard because you're so by the book, like, it just sucks. Or something that's just a weird rule, like, I know there are rules about, like, how far you can jump that are a little iffy in the book.
Right.
And if a player is just trying to, like, make a jump across a cavern, like, in the book, there's no, like, you don't make an athletics check. You can jump, I think it's like a number of feet equal to your strength score or something. I don't remember.
I don't
But it's
remember
dumb. It doesn't
either.
make any sense. And, like, in that moment, if a player is like, can I not make an athletics roll for that? Isn't that why that skill exists? Like, I think that would be a great time to be like, yeah, of course, that totally makes sense to me. Forget that stupid rule. We're going to go ahead and do this.
Right.
I think putting yourself in the player's shoes and remembering what it's like when you're like, well, you're telling me I can't do this, then what's my character sheet good for?
Right. I think I like to look at it also as like I'm freaking Bob Ross and you guys are all my happy trees. Help me paint this beautiful, magnificent forest. And sometimes like there's got to be structure to that forest.
Right.
But what if this tree did this? And I'm like, you know what? That might be pretty cool. Like, because I think like when we DM too, like we entertain people when they watch us as well. So we got
Hmm.
to think about that too. Is that entertaining? Am I being entertaining or am I just being an ass?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I ride that line pretty close, I guess.
Well, and I mean, like, there is a situation where you have to step in and be like as the DM, you are the harbinger of the rules. Like, you have to be able to say no. Now, I would argue that there are a few times when just a flat no is the right answer. I think most of the
Right.
time a no but or a yes but is a lot better, right? Like, no, you
Right.
can't just lob that guy's head off because he still has 82 hit points. But,
Right.
like, you can still describe, like, you go for his neck and you cut his neck or something. Like, sure, like, that's fun. We can talk, describe the attack. That's fine. So I think, like, you definitely do need to be able to put your foot down and say no. That's where kind of the rules come in there. But at the same time, like, yeah, like you were saying, are you just being an ass? Are you just saying no because you're like, no, this is my monster, you can't kill it, or like, no, I made this.
Right.
I spent 30 minutes coming up with this challenge. You're not gonna beat it in 30 seconds with your stupid little immovable rod. Like, I
There was
think.
somebody. What was it? I listened to a podcast the other day. It was from a player's perspective.
Mhm.
Actually, they took the Twitter about for DMs, and one of the things that she said that a lot of the DMs and Twitter said is like, "We're not against you."
Yeah.
I'm like, that is absolutely true. And sometimes I think that the players can get like they can think that way sometimes, and then you have to remind them. But yeah, but I work with you on this and this.
Hmm.
We want you to succeed, but occasionally you're going to have to fail. And sometimes the failure does tell a pretty good story.
Well, and that's the thing
So,
too, right? Like, the failure should lead to more story. It should lead to, I mean, unless it's
right,
a TPK, but at that point, it can still lead to more story. It's like, well, what's this new group do, or whatever.
right,
But, like, yeah, failure should lead to more story. It shouldn't just be like, ah, I got you. If you got a DM who's like that, then maybe run and start a new
yeah,
group. But
yeah, find somebody else.
yeah, but yeah, that's kind of the attitude that DMs have, at least good DMs have, is, we're on your side. We want to see your cool stuff succeed as well. That's another thing to keep in mind, though, too. Like, as the DM, there's so many tools at your disposal, and you see all sorts of abilities all over the place. Sometimes a player wants to do something cool that might not correlate exactly with the rules, but, like, lines up with maybe like a background feature that
Right.
they have, or a class feature that they have, or something. You're like, and it's like, well, this is the one time all campaign that this particular aspect of my character can kind of show itself, and it really sucks if the DM is like, well, the rules say on page 165 that you can't do that. So like that's, I mean, I think that's just kind of what we're talking about, right? Is like,
Gotta
let
be
the
a
players
fine
be able to
line.
shine. Yeah.
I
Streets
think
had a failure state last night. Snuck up ahead a ladder. Yep. Rolled an
right.
11 stealth. Then thought, fuck it, let's peek around the corner. Yeah, exactly. But that did actually work really well. The encounter was hilarious. Yeah, it worked very well. All the Terrafolk ended up getting bottlenecked, so like it didn't really hurt anybody. You just kind of got to have more fun with a magic carpet. And you got that
Dude,
funny moment of stepping around the corner and seeing more enemies and being like, ah, crap. But
I
yeah, that was
honestly
good. That was
thought I
good.
was gonna bite it. I thought I was gonna bite it. I was thinking, it was like, okay, what kind of character I want to roll? Because
Yeah.
I didn't realize on that map there was a cliff,
Yep.
and it only makes sense for that guy to punt me off. And I'm
Yep.
like, ooh, and I'm sitting there with my character's life flashing before his eyes, getting ready to find my last words. But Jordan was able to save me.
Yeah, I think what he's bringing up right now is a really good example of kind of what we're talking about, right? Like, and to be honest, like it was fun, and like he did fail. The rules did say he rolled an 11. They had a passive perception. Peek behind the curtain, guys. They had a passive perception of 12, so you barely lost. You barely rolled too low. But
That's
so they noticed
hilarious.
him. But then like he ran around the corner and then rolled a stealth check, and like this really kind of was a rule of cool thing. Like the rules are kind of vague with where stealth works and how it works. And he was in a little bit of a cave, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, you're good at hiding. It's dark here. There's probably rocks here and there. We'll say there's a boulder that you can kind of try and hide behind. So he hid like in the hallway, but like kind of the way that we had built it up and worked together to kind of make sense anyway.
Right.
It ended up working very well. And again, all the craziness with the carpet. I think that was another really cool thing. I let you guys use the magic carpet multiple times around. Probably should have only been one time around, but that's another point where I was just like, honestly, it's serving the story. You guys are having fun with it. It's making sense. It's getting you guys in position to where you can actually fight these things rather than have one of you try and take on four. Like, that's just sucks for everyone. So it just made sense,
I think
and
that's
it works.
where it goes into too. Like I think you just got to have a feel. Like
Yeah.
you'll know when it happens, because sometimes it's like in Dungeons and Dragons, most things happen right on the fly. You
Yeah.
can't plan everything.
Yep.
And like you said, you want your players to succeed. Sometimes things happen. My character could have died. I was prepared for that. I was like, oh, sadness. I like this guy, but And Aladdin came and saved me. So I was kind of hoping Steppenwolf's magic carpet ride, but Megan's a Disney fan, and I will answer that why she's like, why do you not like Disney? And I never got the chance to answer it. It's because 6th grade, nothing but Disney songs. Dear God, help me. So that's why.
Okay.
Let me go back to the topic. I just
Disney
felt like
tangent. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I need to go back to just a mini I needed to get that out of my system. I always I know Jordan hates it when I say this, but he's like, how do you know? And I'm like, I just know. I just have a feeling.
Yeah, it's really hard to quantify. It's you do it for a while and you just kind of get that instinct. Yeah.
You go with your gut, it's cool, and at the same time, you got to be okay with the failure of something. I think one of the really cool things I did for Jimmy's character was I gave him his gun at level 1. Why did I do that?
Yeah, I didn't realize you did that until we started playing. I was like, huh, okay, that's interesting.
I did that because for me personally, it honestly goes to continuity. This is Varen's son. He's going to teach this kid how to use a firearm. He gives him his old antique firearm, which was only 4 rounds. I even sent him a picture with what I thought it would look like. He's like, yeah, that looks cool. And it's not, to me, it's not OP because it's the same of him having a hand crossbow or whatever, doing that much. And but then you made it magical. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But god damn it, I was really trying hard to
I will.
A real cool thing I did do too on that game was I know Adrian wanted that guy's bat, so I had to make a great club, and I, instead of 2 and 2d8, I did make it 2d6, and I nerfed it just a little bit because he's not a bugbear. But I gave him a non-magical item.
The bugbear does 2d8 with that club because he does an extra d8. He does it's actually in a bugbear stat block. It says they do an extra damage die because of how strong they are.
Yeah, but
so it makes sense that you dropped it down to the 6s. It does definitely make sense. So I think that's really cool. I think that's a good example. I will just kind of back to Varen real quick. I'm just gonna say, if he would have gone Nomad Highwayman, he would have gotten his gun at level 1 anyway. So he should have played my custom class rather than playing the stupid gunslinger class, because Nomad's better and he would have been more powerful and had more fun. So just saying, you know. By the way, I should put that on the DM's Guild so that people can grab it if they want to.
You really should. Like it's very broad. Yeah. Like I eventually want to do one for myself, and if
I just need to play test it more.
I'd probably go Highway. Yeah. I know, but I'm like, I just got done telling you, it's like I can't run anymore right now. I'm so torched.
I know.
It's not that I don't love doing it. It's just like sometimes when you and I'm the kind of person that I hate saying no, and I want to pack on as much stuff as I possibly can because it keeps me busy. But then I get too busy.
We might actually make that our next topic, burnout. I know the burnout. Yeah,
yeah.
I know that I was actually just saying this before. The WebDM guys actually just did a video on burnout, which was really good. So I don't know that ours would be any better, but there's that one.
Well, it'd be
but yeah, maybe we'll do that next time. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's really hard to quantify when to kind of step in and just give the rule of cool and bend the rules some, other than continuing to do it. I think being okay with failing is a big part of it, right? Like every DM is going to mess up here and there, you know. I mean, Steve, you'll always bring up giving my brother the Staff of the Woodlands at level 1 or 2 or whatever. Like that's a big one. You're like, I want to do something cool. I want to give out magic items. The player's handbook says don't give out magic items till like level 5. First of all, I think that's stupid. Ignore that. But like Steve is like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give out a staff. Why not this one? Without reading what it does.
I did read all the way through what it did, and it was probably a mythic item.
I've done stuff like that before. I mean, I've got a great example right now in the game last night. Right, like I gave Megan that sword that like I purposefully made this thing ridiculously overpowered because it just story-wise made sense. And I'm working on making things for other players too, because I don't want there to be a power imbalance. But like that totally works. You can do that. Like the book says, you know, that's probably not a great idea, but once you have like some of that experience under you, you can figure out how to balance things. And honestly, I think we had some really balanced encounters last night. You guys were challenged, and that was fun.
I have never burnt through every spell slot before. I burnt through every spell slot and my ring. That is like, I'm like, these guys want to keep on going. And of course, my character's like, yeah, let's keep on going. Steve on the inside is going, fuck no. I need like a day or two to re-prep my ring. I need to get my spells. So I played the character.
I also think the rule of cool can really help not bog a game down too. Like there are some times when a player's trying to do something and I will stop to try and find the actual rule because I think what they're trying to do is going to be a bit too overpowered for the situation. But a lot of times, if they're trying to do something and I don't quite know the rule off the top of my head and it doesn't seem like it's going to break anything, just do it. We'll figure it out later. And that's a great place to kind of bring in that rule of cool, right? Like if you're not exactly sure on the ruling and all they're doing is like changing their positioning or something, yeah, it's going to have a little bit of impact in the game, but it's not going to break anything. Sure, that's fine. We'll do it and we'll figure it out later and whatever. Sometimes though, like, I think that's where the balance comes in, right? There's that versus someone's casting a spell for the first time that I haven't read before, and they're trying to. I hate throwing Adrian under the bus, but like careful. They're trying to use Wall of Force to put a thing over every single party member's head so that they can't get hit or whatever. And it's like that just doesn't sound right. And then like in that situation, I think that's a good one to go and read the spell and realize, it says it's got to be contiguous, like you have to keep it all in one line, basically. So you can't just pick and choose where you're putting this thing. So like I think there's, I think a good rule of thumb is if it's game breaking or seems to be overpowered, then maybe like try and figure out the rule, or even just make a decision right then and there to be like, unless you can show me the rule, no, we're not doing that. Otherwise, players are having fun with it. You're having fun with it. Let it go. Why not?
Let it go. Just like Frozen.
Let it go. Let it. Okay, I'm not gonna start singing. No, that's not okay. With that, we are roughly halfway through, so we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break, 3 minutes or so, and we will be back with some questions on the other side.
Gonna get that Disney content strike, DCMA or whatever. Thanks, Twitch. Fuck off. Swimming through the bullshit.
I don't want to swim through bullshit. That doesn't sound fun.
Oh, come on. I mean, that's 90% of what dealing with people is swimming through bullshit.
Yeah, well.
Trying to figure out what fun. You're willing to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has its moments. It has its moments.
On that note, welcome back. We are here once again with the Flycast, the second half of the hour. Gonna go ahead and move on and take some questions. Again, if you are not a part of the Discord, whether you're watching live on Twitch or on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, there should be a link somewhere to our Discord. Go ahead and join there. You can jump into the Flycast channel and leave questions throughout the week, which we get to here on the podcast live. Can also go ahead and throw questions live in chat. We'll try and get to those as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in here. Kill that music. Boom, boom. All right. Let's take a look. What do we got? First question, from Mutt. Which is your preference, between Rule of Cool and Rules as Written? I mean, I told him we were going to get to that, obviously. That's kind of what we talk about. I don't know that preference is the right word, right? Like... Right. I think we both know the need for both. I think it's a lot of fun to let that rule of cool fly. I think that should really always be there, especially because like 5e really does open itself up to rule of cool a lot, because it does, like, there's a lot of area where there's kind of gray areas, and it's like, just use your best judgment, figure it out, as opposed to a system like Pathfinder, which I'm not going to rag on it. I do really like some of these systems with more rules as well, but like they have a rule for everything. Like I was talking about, there is, like, I'm not kidding, there is there are like 4 different rules for how to balance on a log. Like, that's absurd. Nobody needs that. Nobody asked for that. Nobody, yeah, just forget that. So, like, I think there's obviously a point where either side gets a little ridiculous. I really enjoy that 5e allows you to use the rule of cool a lot, and I really enjoy it. At the same time, I need the rules. So, I mean, I don't think that Steve's answer is going to be any different than that.
No, not really. I mean, I always told myself I love good story, and I want you guys to help me
Yeah,
tell that story. And I will use my best judgment if I need to change something. I mean, they even tell you, like, if you don't like it, change it.
yeah.
Like, and that's what I do. I mean, and then I'll own up if somebody, if I'm wrong on something, tell me after the game. I'll look it up. I'll apologize. But at the same time, if I'm right, I'm not necessarily going, ha ha, fuck you. That's not really what I want to do either. But yeah, I gotta have some balance, man. I'm too chaotic of a person. I need some balance.
Map Compass Key. What is your least favorite rules as written, as a DM and also as a player?
Hmm.
These like
It's a
favorite
tough
and
one.
least favorite type questions are always so difficult for me to answer on the
Yeah.
spot. But let me think. Um, do you have one?
Dude, that is a good one. What was it? What is
Least
that?
favorite rules as written, as a DM and also as a player. I think I've actually got one. I've actually got one. One that two. I have two that I really, really, really hate. And there's a reason that I don't use them. First one. The rule on spell casting is if you cast a spell, any spell, then you cannot cast another spell that turn unless it's a cantrip.
Mm,
So, for instance, Misty Step is a bonus action. You
yep.
cannot Misty Step and then cast Fireball, or you
Right.
cannot Fireball and then cast Misty Step. You can
Right.
Misty Step and then Firebolt, or if you're a sorcerer and you're using your meta magic to quicken a spell, you can't cast 2 spells. You can only cast a spell and then a cantrip, basically. I understand why. Like, they don't want the wizard, or sorry, they don't want the sorcerer casting fireball twice in a turn. Like, that's a lot. So I understand why.
Yeah. But then you
I
got the fighter who can do that much damage at least to a single target.
Right. So that's
So
why I
it's
house rule that one to where I use the same one that actually Matt Mercer does, to where you can the second spell that you cast has to be a lower level spell at least, so that you're still not you're not casting 2 4th level spells or whatever, but you can still cast that fireball and then Misty Step.
right.
So like I like that. It still more or less accomplishes the goal as to why the rule was written that way without being so anal about it. And the second one that I cannot stand, and again, I understand why. Action economy is so important in 5e, but I cannot stand that drinking a healing potion is an action.
Yeah,
It's
that is a
ridiculous.
big
I hate
one.
it. Because I mean, as a DM, I don't care as much. Like, if my player wants to take their turn doing that, then great. But as a player, that is so awful. Like, as a player, then, the only time that you would ever drink a healing potion is as an absolute last resort. Because if you're in a fight to where you need to drink a healing potion, chances are you're going to get hit for that much damage anyway on your like
Right.
before you get your turn again. So what was the point of that?
What
Like, it
was the
accomplished
point?
literally nothing, which is why I let you do it as a bonus action. Um, yeah. So those are two that stand out for me.
Sounds good to me because I can't think of any that I actually absolutely hate.
All right.
I don't think I could think of spells that I hate.
Well, I mean, that kind
That I'm
of
like
falls under rules as written if they're written that way. Like, what spell?
sometimes spells that are really powerful can cuck an entire encounter. That happened to me when you cast that one spell, and I'm like, oh fucking a! I spent a lot of time making that NPC too. And I'm like, even if there's a gold cost, but at a high level, a gold cost is sometimes just not an issue anymore, especially with how I run them. I'm like, gold doesn't
We got
really.
a couple of a couple of examples in chat about barbarians can't reckless attack with a reaction, and their rage ends unless they're attacking or being hit. Yeah, I agree
Yeah, that
with
can
that
be
first
boo.
one. I agree with that first one. I think if you recklessly attack, you should get that as your reaction as well. Yeah, I think that's a dumb rule as written. The second half, though, I think makes total sense to me. Well,
It
it doesn't
almost
make
be like
total
your
sense to me.
adrenaline wearing
I
off.
think, yeah, because I understand why they're trying to do that, right? It's your adrenaline wearing off. However, at the same time, like if you just can't get to someone to attack them, as long as you're still acting aggressively, you should still retain the rage. I feel like so, like as long as you're running
Or
as
hit
fast as you can
yourself.
towards someone or something like that, I think you should be able to keep it. So yeah, I think I on second thought, I do agree that one is a little frustrating as well.
Not
Um,
hiding. Yes,
yeah.
you are.
Is there a specific rule of cool that you kind of hate for some reason?
No, because like it's if you make a decision, you made a decision. Like if you've ever made a decision to do something, and when you're running the game, because you're my DM,
Hmm.
then you had a good reason for it, and I'm going to let
Right.
it go. And it's whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent. And there's been times I've been like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Or I didn't like your decision. But at the end of the day, it's your game. I'm playing in it. So you made a decision. I'm going to roll with it. I mean, that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything because, like, as a DM, if you let it go, then you can't really hate that. Like, that's your own fault. So then, as a player, I
Right.
just really can't think of anything.
No, I really can't because like there's been plenty of times I've sold you an idea and you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, sure. Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah,
And it wasn't necessarily something or somebody else sold you something. I'm like, you
yeah.
can't do that, teammate. Why would I ever want you to succeed?
Right. This is one I definitely wanted to get to from Mutt. It's long, because
Okay.
he kind of is trying to explain what he's talking about here. But he says, with rules as written, you also have the sage advice. Obviously, it is useful for rules that are unclear. And that's so the sage advice. That's kind of Twitter when Jeremy Crawford and
Right.
whoever all else
Right.
answer questions.
Oh,
Um,
Crawford.
but
Yeah.
I've seen multiple things that add things to an ability that are nowhere in the rules. So he's talking about like in your player's handbook or like the published books, there have been things that they've said in errata or in the Sage Advice that directly contradicts what's in the printed book. Um, how do you handle a player that may not know about the errata in rules that may change an ability despite having read their that may not know about the errata and rules that might change the way an ability works despite the player have actually read their abilities correctly in the player's handbook? He uses this example here. Um, a draconic sorcerer at level 6 gains the elemental affinity, which means that they get to add their proficiency bonus, not proficiency, I'm sorry, they get to add their charisma bonus to a die roll when they cast a spell that uses their specific element, right? So, like a red dragon, that would be fire, black,
Yeah.
acid, so on and so forth. The rule in the player's handbook says when you cast the spell, you add your charisma modifier to the damage. That's it. However, in the errata, Sage Advice, and even like when I pulled up Fantasy Grounds, in the Fantasy Grounds player's handbook, not my printed one, it says you add your charisma bonus to only one damage roll. So,
That's
for
really lame.
instance, with Scorching Ray, you're actually rolling the die 3 times. You only get to add it once, as opposed to on all 3 of those rays. But the book doesn't actually say that. So that's what he's talking
Uh,
about. And his question is, how do you handle that if that comes up?
I'd probably let him have the damage on the other two, honestly.
Yeah.
Because why do you want to take away that? Why do you want to take away that cool
Mm.
factor there?
Yeah.
Do you like if do you really think it's gonna nuke a boss?
Right.
No. We both do a good job of making sure guys have enough HP. We have ran enough campaigns to know that high level D&D gets crazy damage. And like yeah, the monsters sometimes get crazy damage too, but your fight might last a round if you're not careful.
Jazz, to clarify, it's Scorching Ray is the specific example. Scorching Ray, you roll 3 separate attacks. So there are 3 rays of fire that shoot out. They can each target the same enemy or different ones, whatever. But it's like
Right.
one ray is 1d20 roll, and then you roll 2d6 for the damage. So that's where the rules are different there. Steve, I totally agree. I agree 100%. I think I will rule it based off of the rule that I know. So if I know that the errata says one thing, and that is kind of what I'm ruling off of, that's how I'm going to rule. But if the player says to me, hey, like, my ability says this, and they're able to show that to me and explain to me what they have read, and that contradicts what I was going off of, I'm not going to punish the player for having done everything correctly. It's not their fault that apparently the player's handbook was published incorrectly, and they had to issue a kind of like tack on rule later that's nowhere else in the books.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, while I may have originally ruled according to the errata, if I knew about it or if that's what I was reading, if the player can present to me something else that they've done everything they're supposed to, and this is what it says, I'm not going to punish them for that. That said, additionally, I think that example is a great example too, because I also think that errata is stupid and just wouldn't use that.
If he wants to nerf his own campaigns, then he can nerf them. I don't give a shit what he does.
Yeah, so like I think that specific rule I just wouldn't use anyway. But as an overall talking about the subject, I think if the player has done what they're supposed to and they can show me the rule where it says X and I am clearly wrong, or whatever I've been going off of is different and they just didn't have access to it, I'm obviously not going to punish them for that. I think I think that's definitely a situation where I would be using Rule of Cool. I don't expect the players to have read the errata. I don't expect the players to have read the player's handbook. I expect my player to have read their stuff. And right. If they have, then what they say goes. Like, it's that simple.
Exactly.
Here's we've talked about this for sure, but from Map Compass Key, what is the deciding factor in deciding when it's rules as written or when you'll allow it because it's cool?
Again, I kind of go with my gut. It's sometimes it just depends on the tenseness of a situation. If it's if it's pretty tense and they're trying to do something, it might be a little too over the top, or it might be over the top in a good way. Mm-hmm. So just like, I think it just really goes back to like, how's this going to affect this combat? Is it going to negatively affect the player? Is it going to negatively affect the combat to where it's just not fun for anybody? But if it makes it fun, then why not?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree. Like, it really is a feel factor. Like, you get it as you go along. Yeah, if it's not going to break anything, first of all, I think that's a big rule right there. If it's not going to break anything, then you're probably okay to do it. I do also like what you were saying about about tensity also, because that will certainly begin to sway me. Like, there's a few things that will sway me a lot in favor of, like, a rule of cool. If it's a very tense situation and the party is screwed, like, take last night's example and multiply it, right? Like, if instead of walking in on 4 Terrafolk, we had one character who was 300 feet away from the party and just walked in on a deity alone and is about to get squashed. Like, that's a situation where basically any creative idea that the party can come up with to not instantly all die, I'm gonna hear it out at least, and try and let that work, because I don't want to kill them.
You're kind of boned.
Yeah. So like, I'm going to try and let that work.
There have been times where I've been like,
You deserve it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's fair too.
Figure it out.
That's fair too. That's fair too.
But
that's
it out.
So that's the thing though, is you figure it out. I'm not going to solve your problem for you, but if you come to me with a creative idea that's nowhere in the rules, then I'm going to hear it out at least.
I'm going to hear that out.
Yeah. I also just really like to encourage and reward creativity, right? So like if it's coming from a place of, I want a power game and kill the monster in one blow, then I'm just going to pretty much ignore you and move on. If it's coming from a place of, this might not even be the most optimal situation, but it's fun and cool and I like it and it's creative, like we're fighting a Triceratops and I want to get on top of it and ride it and try and steer it into a tree instead. Probably not the most optimal thing. I could probably just attack it with my sword, but that's really fun. Sure, try. Make an animal handling check. Like, I like that.
Why not?
So I think the creativity factor, in addition to kind of like that tension factor, certainly have a lot to do that with me. And then, of course, kind of the follow-up to that, how has Brent influenced our games with his catchphrase of, hear me out?
I catch myself doing it all the time,
yep.
I generally tend to scowl a little bit whenever he tells me that, because I know how he is with his, like, I don't even think he means to do it, but he's a game breaker and he likes to be very creative.
Yeah.
With that, and it's a lot of times I have to catch myself to be like, all right, now hear me out. And I'll just immediately just scowl. I'll be like, oh God, now what? But at the same time, though, there's been a lot of cool shit that happened. Like, he had a character lose a friggin' arm.
Yeah.
So
I love the hear me out because it's always creative. The worst that you can do is say no, or like you can always do the no but, right? Like, okay, no, obviously what you're trying to do is way too over the top, but you can like yeah, you can't just cut this dude's arm off because the rules say he still has 100 hit points. But what you can do is go ahead and grapple that arm, and that way he can't do anything with it for a turn, or I don't know, something along those lines. Like, you're trying to do something creative, I want to reward that, but there's a point. And I think that works. Absolutely. I think Jordan was actually talking about this earlier about how the whole hear me out thing has kind of become a meme amongst the group, which kind of allows everyone to kind of feel like they can be creative and come up with these wild and wacky ideas. And worst case scenario, it just doesn't work, but no one feels bad about that. They're like, yeah, okay, my crazy idea didn't work, I'll do the normal thing. But it lends everyone the ability to at least try and come up with something out of the box like that, which I think is great for the game, to be honest.
It's good too for because it lets the players know that, hey, I might be able to pitch this to him. He's not always going to be a hard ass, and just kind of like see where it goes. I mean, half of our job sometimes is improv.
Yeah.
And and if I don't have an answer, I'll be real honest with you and be like, I just don't know. I hate to do that because I know we want to entertain people. We want to entertain you, but I have been guilty of being like, Adrian, I just don't know. I need to know more about where you're from. Yeah. Let's workshop it. Hit me up sometime. Yeah. He hasn't hit me up. Yeah. So under that bus, Greyhound style.
One more from Map Compass Key. How do you deal with or recommend dealing with the loss of enthusiasm when a player is told no to their perceived cool idea?
That's hard, man, because that just goes back to the whole thing. Like, we want you to succeed, but sometimes there has to be a line in the sand. Like where he said right here, like you chop a limb off with a stupid high roll. You're not, like, with how hit points are, that's not necessarily going to happen. But, like, a lot of times what I'll do is, like, a telltale sign of when a creature is about ready to bite it. I've plenty of times said, you whop an arm off. This guy's bleeding out all over the place. And you're like, oh, shit, he's real low. Just trying to paint that picture. But I think that also goes, like, you gave her a Vorpal weapon, and I about shit myself. Because I have never once considered giving anybody a Vorpal weapon. Because then you got the complicated rules of, well, you can't behead this person. You can't behead this thing.
Yeah, they just take a bunch of extra damage.
Yeah. So, but it's cool because like you saw how much fun she was having, and I was having fun watching her have fun. Like Jordan and I are literally giving her our pets to like
yeah.
because like
Well,
we're
I
we're
think
now
that's
playing
been
the
a
odd.
I think that's been a cool thing there too, because the whole party has developed kind of a system, how they
Right.
tactically enter combat now, based off of that, right? Like you both use your familiars a certain way. You both, cast your spells and attack from a distance. And then with Grady in there as the support character, it was the perfect 4-person party. To be
I
honest, it was amazing,
know.
and I
I'm gonna
mean,
miss him.
yeah, it was really cool. I, Back to the question, I would start by as rarely as possible actually saying no to their cool idea. If it is
Right.
cool, then if it is cool and it's not game breaking or anything like that, then just say yes. If it is too overpowered, then you got to come up with like a yes but or a no but we can try this. Like always try and work with the player. Sometimes there's stuff that's just way out there, and it's just like, I want to
Sometimes
suck
we
this
can work
goblin's
it.
dick in the middle of battle. No, you don't. Like,
No,
let's
you
move on.
don't.
But like, for the most part, like shy of that, you can probably work with a player to achieve something that makes sense and is still kind of accomplishing what they're trying to do. No, you
Right.
can't climb the Triceratops, grab a hold of it, and steer it into a tree and have it run full force all in one turn. But you can climb on top of it and make an animal handling check to try and grab control this turn, and we'll see what happens next turn. Okay, I can live with that.
Right. Right.
I think that sort of idea is really the best way to deal with that, because if you're always just beating your player over the head and saying no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, you're gonna have a game with no creativity.
And they're not gonna want to play
Bro,
anyway. Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I don't know why I came up with that, but anyway, we're gonna move on from Goblin Dice.
It's probably my fault. I've probably done something like that in the past. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Gonna beat that goblin off in the middle of this combat.
Okay, this is our last question, which is perfect because we are just about out of time. But for your own personal way, this is from Mutt. From your own personal way of doing the rules that divert from the handbook, how do you handle players that are new to your games, whether they're new players or just haven't played in games with you before? Have you created your own supplement for players, explaining your personal rules, etc.? Basically, like, how do you handle house rules, essentially, and kind of
Yeah.
manage that expectation with newer players?
I got this one because I've had newer players. I have a whole other group that are
Mm-hmm.
just got through their first campaign, and I think the biggest key is communication. Tell them up front what you expect. Tell them what this world is about. Let them know, and then as the game goes, let them experiment, and then make that decision on the fly. Like a player dispelled a golem. There was no rule that said he couldn't. It's a
Mm-hmm.
construct, but I'm like, at the same time, that golem was made of magic. I made a rule, whether it was right or wrong, because I thought it was cool, and I let him do it. And I even told him, I said, now I might not do that all the time, but I like where your head is at. I'm going to reward you for the creativity. Yeah, that golem is now just gone. So that's kind of how I do it, is communication and letting them, because you want them to push the bounds to see where they can go, and you want to try to like widen the river as if you need to broaden the river, you need to like squeeze it back down to a creek. Let them push that a little bit to see where they're at. That way they know, like, I can get away with this with my DM or I can't. Like, let them figure that out, and then just good communication. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think with stuff, when you're talking specifically about like rule of cool stuff and just kind of bending rules here and there and just kind of being a little bit loose with stuff, I don't have a better answer than that really. Than you just kind of like figure it out on the fly as you go, as you kind of learn the DM style and the player style. Maybe something can be said to set expectations up front that like, hey, especially if it's like if it's a new player. yeah, I try and keep close to the rules, but at the same time, I like letting players have fun and being a little bit creative with stuff. Setting those sorts of expectations is good. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, it's just really kind of experience in letting kind of seeing what happens as the game goes. I will say for things that are like specific house rules that I know that I definitely do different than the player's handbook. I haven't had a new player in a while, to be honest. But I will try and kind of like make that known. Something along the lines of how I do that. The two that I mentioned, right? The spell casting. I say you can cast 2 spells. They just have to be different level or a lower level. And then with the healing potion, you can take a healing potion as a bonus action. Like I try and like let people know that. I haven't created my own supplement or anything explaining them because there's so few. But yeah, I think those two. I think death. I handle resurrection differently. Other than like the revivify spell. Like there's always going to be some sort of check involved. I want resurrection to be more difficult than just finding 1,000 gold diamond because those apparently are like candy in the world of D&D. You find them everywhere. So I mean, I just don't have enough to, like, I've never really considered writing a supplement or anything about it, but, yeah, just kind of try and let people know, what I do differently, and then, like, for the loosey-goosey stuff, you just kind of figure it out on the fly.
Yeah, man. Let it flow.
Let it flow. Let it flow. No, not doing that.
Yeah.
With that... That is the episode. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Those of you who are here live, thank you a ton. We really appreciate you guys. If anyone is showing up late, you can catch us later on. I'll try and get this up by the weekend on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like. If you are watching or listening on one of those platforms, thank you so much. Join the Discord. Leave questions. We'll go ahead and announce our topic for next week soon. In the meantime, though, Steve streams over on twitch.tv/Stevo the DMO in the corner there. I don't know. Do you have anything going on?
Today I might come on in another hour or two. I just want to chill because I've literally been in front of computer screens all day.
Yeah. But
I know I'd like to get some of the new Destiny content done, and then after that, who knows? Because like it's probably going to take me an hour or two at most. But eventually, after taking a break, we'll be doing a new campaign. Not new to some people because some people know what it is, but we're going to be doing Midgard for those other players. So that's that, and eventually I want to do a Destiny game for my buddy. But I need to. I don't know how to make. I don't know how to make tables in Fantasy Grounds when I'm like. It's confusing. Yeah.
I can help you with that.
But, that's good because I literally got mad on stream. It's like it won't fucking work.
It's a little weird, but yeah, I can help you with that. So cool. Hopefully tonight, and then I know he streams every once in a while here and there throughout the week, and then maybe next week or sometime in the future he'll have a weekly Sunday game, but not quite yet. So. Awesome. And then over here on this channel, you can catch us every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We go back and forth between my game and Steve's game. This coming week will be Steve's game. We're in the Eberron setting, and I'm playing a Warforged Artificer who's nice and fancy, so that should be fun. We actually are going to have a bonus stream on Saturday this week as well. Our home game, the Wine Women Adventure Tour. We are staying remote due to, COVID reasons and whatnot, and so, hey, may as well stream it. So, the party currently, they had just killed some giants, and they're trying to get back home, because they are foreigners in a war-torn country. So, that's
I'm
fun.
In danger!
Yeah, Steve plays a human from the opposing kingdom, so they think he's a spy, so that's fun. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys then. Of course, every Wednesday we'll be here as well. Until then, though, thanks for hanging out with us, and peace out.
Yeah, later. Well, hey, sheep.